Hello, Brian.
Hi, Sanders.
To your mind, why it's important to integrate scent into art?
Well, up to this point, art has essentially used most modalities. You've got visual art that also uses uh, aural or the sense of hearing. You've got art that is performative that uses haptics or touch. It just seems like if all the senses are capable of dealing with aesthetic moments, why don't we just embrace scent and for that matter, taste as well? The history of art, at least in a Western sense, has long used all the senses. It's just that the discipline of art history has, over the years, really focused on the visual. Hence, we get the word visual arts, when in fact, art has for the most part always been multisensory.
And from your perspective, what scent can enhance in artwork and perception?
In my perspective, it really rests with the artist as an individual who's in touch with their sensibility, that kind of combination of head, heart, to answer that, to answer that question on their own. Because, for instance, I come out of a conceptual art domain, and when I think about why I used sense, it really goes against the reasons why most people use sense, and most almost all the people I know in the so-called olfactory art world use it because it talks about memory, because it evokes emotion. Whereas for me, it is just about embodied living, and thinking with all of your senses, and just which is to say a direct kind of extension of living like as a whole being. And so I don't necessarily want to exploit emotions. I don't even necessarily want to augment the kind of cognitions that visual art has. For me, it's much more important to just privilege the art audience as an embodied individual that thinks with their entire being.
And can you maybe give some strong example?
Sure. Um, the exhibition that I have up in China right now has four paintings from a series called Foodways, and Foodways came out of a series of um, cooking schools that I uh, ran, and basically this was all funded by a commission, a grant from the Commission for Arts and Culture in San Diego, and they wanted me to do a project in a city park. And so what I started to do was they gave me a park and said, try to do a project here. And so I went to this park, and what was amazing was that here were all these different groups of people, loosely bound by ethnicity, and they occupied different places in the park, and each group were maintaining their culture's culinary cuisine by means of like grilling. And so depending on how the wind blew that day, you could smell the Philippines, you could smell Eritrea or Ethiopia, you could smell Mexico, you could smell Iraq. And what was interesting to me was that I hadn't tasted anything. I'm just smelling and I'm just looking. And so I introduced myself to some of these people, and I convinced them to let me study under them, and then I learned so much about them and their food ways that I convinced them that if I pay them, could they become teachers themselves? And so I organized this cooking school where students now can learn the food ways from each of these four women who taught me. And so this project that inform the paintings that I have on exhibit in China right now. This project was about storytelling. It was about tactile, like literally, a woman will take the knife from you and say, "No, no, I want you to cut it this way. Feel feel the haptic sensation of cutting the onions this way, or par cook the lentils this way." And so it was like, as everybody who cooks knows, it was a multi-sensory task where you weren't going to succeed just by doing something, just by relying on your visual sense, or just by relying on your oral sense, or just by relying on your gustatory sense. This was using your entire body as it was made to be used. And the documentation I have from that project, it was called By Means of Smoke Cooking School. It's astonishing because here are all these people losing themselves at the very moment that they are accessing all of their sensory modalities simultaneously. And that's a special feeling.
And what could be your suggestions to the artist who thinking to start use scent into their artwork, but maybe they are doing the first steps?
Be prepared to be caught off guard. And I think that to me, that's the freedom that the artists have, and should embrace. So when you incorporate scent into your work, it's going to trigger a bunch of questions that you'll need to answer. And what's exciting to me about that is that being caught off guard is an amazing opportunity to be surprised. And when you're surprised as an artist, you are much more honest and authentic to the experience, and it becomes a negotiation between you and the multimodal um, um, communication, or modes of expression, however you want to phrase it, the ways that the different sensations will work together. And that allows so-called visual artists to work both multisensory and in different temporal modes, since the sense of smell is going to come and go depending on, how you corral it in an artwork.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.